In the crowded streets of Bangladesh, power is not merely spoken, it is fought for, and some voices, once raised, are never silenced quietly. Sharif Usman Hadi, a name that even now carries the weight of a nation's unresolved questions. It was a name that echoed through the marbled halls of influence, spoken with a mixture of reverence and calculation. But it was also a name whispered through the labyrinthine alleyways of dissent, a coded signal for a change that many craved and others deeply feared. To understand the man, you must first understand the landscape he navigated, a world of public declarations and private bargains. Behind the carefully orchestrated speeches, sources whispered of deals traded at midnight, of loyalties bought and sold in the quiet hum of air-conditioned rooms, far from the public gaze. Behind the practiced smiles for the cameras, there was a palpable tension, a sense that every handshake was a negotiation, every promise a potential liability. To his followers, he was more than a leader. He was a phenomenon. Fearless, he possessed an almost preternatural ability to articulate the frustrations of millions, to give voice to the silent anxieties that simmered in tea stalls and on crowded city buses. He spoke not in the polished, evasive language of the political elite, but with a raw, unvarnished clarity that cut through the noise. To them, he was the embodiment of defiance, a symbol that the established order was not invincible. But to his critics, he was profoundly dangerous. They saw not a savior, but a demagogue, a man who masterfully wielded the politics of grievance. Political insiders quietly claimed he was destabilizing decades of fragile consensus, that his rhetoric was a flame held perilously close to a powder keg. Unverified reports suggested his rise was being watched with alarm by powerful entrenched interests who saw his influence as a direct threat to their own. His every move was scrutinized, his every word dissected for hidden meaning. And so he became a paradox, a man of the people who moved in circles of immense power, a champion of transparency whose own dealings were, according to many, shrouded in secrecy. Was he a patriot or a populist? A reformer or a revolutionary? The truth depended entirely on who you asked. In the tea stalls of old Dhaka, his name was spoken in hushed, reverent tones. But in the boardrooms of Gulshan, it was uttered with a note of cold, strategic appraisal. He was a mirror reflecting back the deep divisions of a society grappling with its own identity. And in the end, that is perhaps why, to the nation as a whole, he was simply unavoidable. His presence was a force of nature, a political reality that could not be ignored, sidelined, or wished away. He had become part of the national fabric, a central character in a story whose final tragic chapter had yet to be written. Hadi's words cut sharper than blades. He spoke without pause, without apology. His speeches did not ask for permission. They demanded attention. But where power grows, controversy follows. It is an old, immutable law of human nature. And in the corridors of Dhaka, where ambition and influence intertwine like the city's tangled alleyways, Sharif Usman Hadi was learning this lesson in the harshest of ways. His ascent had been meteoric, a spectacle of charisma and promise that captured the public imagination. Yet behind the carefully constructed facade of unity and progress, a different story was being written. One penned not in official press releases, but in the shadows. Behind the speeches, there were deals. Behind the smiles, there was fear. Behind closed doors, sources whispered of bargains traded at midnight, of loyalties bought and sold like commodities on the open market. Political insiders quietly claimed that rival factions, once held in check by Hadi's popular mandate, now circled like vultures, sensing a moment of weakness. His every move was scrutinized, his every word dissected for hidden meaning. Unverified reports suggested that loyalty was now being measured not in public declarations, but in silence. The silence of those who knew too much. The silence of those who feared the consequences of speaking out. And behind Sharif Usman Hadi, powerful enemies were watching. They were the old guard, the gatekeepers of a system he had vowed to change, and they would not yield their ground without a fight. The stage was being set for a confrontation, not on the floor of Parliament, but in the unseen arenas where real power is contested. The whispers from the corridors of power soon found their echo on the streets. In the tea stalls of old Dhaka, his name was spoken in hushed tones, a mixture of admiration and apprehension. Taxi drivers said one thing, students another. On social media, the carefully managed narrative fractured completely. Rage exploded in comment sections and private groups. Everyone had a theory. No one had proof. The city became a tinderbox of rumour. According to a flurry of conflicting reports, Sharif Usman Hadi stood at the very centre of this escalating political tension. Some swore they saw unmarked cars parked outside his residence late at night. Others insisted that nothing in Bangladesh stays hidden for long, and the truth would inevitably surface. The air grew thick with speculation. Allegations, accusations, denials. The official story was one of stability, but the streets told a tale of chaos and uncertainty. In this volatile atmosphere, truth became a contested territory, and silence became dangerous. To say nothing was to be complicit. To say something was to choose a side, often without knowing the full picture. The city held its breath, waiting for the inevitable spark. And then the spark came. The news broke like a fever, spreading from phone to phone, from rooftop to rooftop. Sharif Usman Hadi was dead. The official cause was left deliberately vague, a vacuum that was immediately filled by a storm of theories. Some believed it was political, a calculated move by his rivals to remove a threat. Political insiders quietly claimed the timing was no coincidence, coming just days before a crucial vote. Others whispered it was personal, a crime of passion or a betrayal from within his own circle, hidden beneath a veneer of politics. And then there was a darker theory, one that few dared to speak aloud. A theory that involved forces far more powerful, shadowy puppeteers for whom a single life was a small price to pay for maintaining control. The truth, many believe, was deliberately buried under layers of misinformation and fear. The streets, however, refused to be silent. They refused to calm. Each night, the anger returned, stronger than before. Chants for justice rolled like thunder across Dhaka, a promise that Sharif Usman Hadi would not be forgotten. Then came the night. Sharif Usman Hadi was murdered, a killing that shook Bangladesh and ignited fury. Questions flooded the streets faster than answers. The news had spread like wildfire, carried on whispers through the winding alleys of old Dhaka and amplified into a digital roar across social media. A single event, a single life extinguished, had become the spark. And in a city simmering with long-held grievances, the streets answered with rage. At first it was a trickle. Small groups gathering at university campuses and public squares, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of candlelight vigils. But grief quickly hardened into something else, something more potent. Soon the trickle became a flood. Protests erupted across the capital, a spontaneous, chaotic and leaderless wave of defiance. Voices once hushed in tea stalls now roared in unison. Chants for justice rolled like thunder across the concrete canyons of the city, a percussive, relentless rhythm of discontent. Anger burned in the air, thick and suffocating, mingling with the acrid smoke of burning tires that now painted the night sky in shades of orange and black. The city's arteries were clogged, not with the usual traffic of rickshaws and cars, but with a river of humanity demanding to be heard. The authorities responded not with words, but with force. Lines of riot police, anonymous and imposing behind their shields and helmets, formed impenetrable walls. The air grew heavy with unspoken threats, a tense standoff between the state's organized power and the people's raw fury. For hours they faced each other under the flickering streetlights, a tableau of a nation divided against itself. But the presence of force did not quell the anger, it only focused it. It became clear to everyone standing on that fractured ground. This was no longer about one man. It became about power, justice, and fear. It was about the deep-seated fear that the system designed to protect was now the very thing to be afraid of. It was about a desperate, primal cry for a justice that felt increasingly out of reach. And it was about a fundamental challenge to the structures of power that had allowed such a tragedy to occur. Unverified reports suggested that behind the police lines, orders were being passed down from the highest echelons, a sign of panic in the corridors of influence. The symbols of the nation were reappropriated, no longer just emblems of statehood, but banners of rebellion. Each raised fist was a question. Each chant was an accusation. The truth, many on the streets believed, was being deliberately buried, and they were there to excavate it with their bare hands, if they had to. Every night, the anger returned, seemingly stronger than the night before. The protests became a nightly ritual, a pilgrimage of the discontented. The movement had taken on a life of its own, a decentralized force that the authorities found impossible to decapitate because it had no single head. From above, Dhaka looked like a city at war with itself. The familiar hum of urban life was replaced by a cacophony of sirens and shouting. The sprawling metropolis, a testament to the nation's ambition, was now paralyzed, held hostage by the very people who were its lifeblood. This was more than a protest. It was a reckoning, a moment where the unspoken contract between the rulers and the ruled had been irrevocably broken. And in the heart of Bangladesh, a generation was learning a hard lesson, that sometimes the only way to be heard is to scream. Sharif Usman Hadi did not fade with death. His legacy remains disputed, his shadow long. To some, a martyr, to others, a warning. In Bangladesh, history is written not only by victors, but by those whose voices refuse to die. Sharif Usman Hadi, remembered, argued, feared.